PD Beats here from Pop Turnus, me to Rye Barrett about In a Violent Nature, going to be exclusively in theaters May 31st. Welcome to the show, man. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's crazy because, being kind of an actor, a filmmaker, you know how it is. There's many like waves and steps of a movie getting disseminated to the world, right? So I remember when I was like reading about this movie, I was like, whoa. Then I saw the trailer for this movie and I was like, whoa. Then I finally watched it and I'm like, whoa, literally, like I can't even imagine. And now more people are going to see it. Does festival runs and everything. Is it kind of starting to hit you that people are going to be able, like a bigger audience is going to be able to see it? It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it is. I'm really excited to see what the public audiences are going to think, because you kind of hear certain things from with festival audiences, and it's going to be a different experience. But I'm really excited for just get out there and for big groups of people to be able to go and just see it.
Absolutely. I'm wondering, like, kind of with the preliminary steps of you being brought this opportunity to be Johnny in A Violent Nature and everything, how much do you know early on about it? Like, do you know, like, do you just know it's a slasher? Do you know that it's going to be in the perspective of you for a good chunk of the movie? Like, how much do you know with, like, the auditions and, like, the conversations with the filmmakers early on?
Shannon and Chris are producers, and Peter, and Chris, director, writer, too. They contacted me after they had already shot a chunk of the movie ahead of time, and they had run into a bunch of issues, like a very long list, including extreme weather and just all sorts of things. So anyway, they contacted me to see if I was interested in it, and I had a meet up with them. We just met up for coffee and kind of chatted about the whole thing. So they explained it pretty well. Chris let me know kind of what he was aiming to do, and that it was going to be something very different, and sort of let me know the perspective of it. And I was really excited about that, because I'm a big horror fan to begin with, and I love all the classic 80s slashers and stuff. So then I had a few meetings with Chris and Peter at Peter's place, and we actually sat down and watched a few films. We watched Angst and Elephant, which are two kind of films that are from not necessarily first person perspective, but you're following the person and you're kind of attached to them through the whole thing. Mm-hmm. So then I had a really good idea as to what they were going for.
Absolutely. It's crazy because right now is an incredible time for horror movies. It is just kind of a genre that's being elevated, feels like we say year after year, feels like week after week. You know what I mean? Like I just see every week there's like a new one coming out. The combination of it being a really good time for slasher films and everything, but also with it being a unique film, like something like this is a film, one can make an argument. We haven't seen a lot of movies like this. This is something we've never seen before. So it's like, was that something that really kind of obviously drew you? Like, yeah, you enjoy the slashers, but like when they're starting to talk to you about how it's going to be shot and what it is, I'm sure that was really exciting for you and everyone involved.
Yeah, it was. I mean, any chance you get to do something that's different, that's kind of thinking outside of the box, and gives you opportunities to present something new to people that they've never really seen this way before. And there's some people who think, like that. I guess the closest thing would be Angst to what the perspective sort of thing is. But a lot of people are thinking, like just from seeing comments on trailers and stuff, that they're going to be walking into like another Friday the 13th movie, or just another slasher. But this is so very different, and it's an experience in of itself. So yeah, that was a huge draw, and just getting to build a character that's he's an homage to a lot of classic slasher killers, but he's very much his own thing at the same time. And the fact that you get to spend all of this time with him is it's a very different thing.
It's so funny you mentioned that, because 100% there will be like the Mike Myers, Jason Voorhees comparisons and everything, but that was definitely something I got. Like Johnny is has a lot of kind of Johnny kind of moments and things that are just Johnny. You know what I mean? They're not kind of tied from, which is really cool. I do want to ask you, because this really was a 0 to 100 movie, right? Because we're following you as Johnny, and you're like walking. You know what I mean? And it's like slow, and then boom, the kills, right? Boom. So like, what was the pace like filming it specifically? Like, did it just feel like you were walking, and then boom, the action? Like, I'm just curious about that. Like, did it feel like an audience member watching it, or was it completely different filming it?
it was kind of probably a little bit of a similar experience as to an audience, but except for that, I knew what each day was going to be. I knew what I was walking into. And so there were certain days that were dedicated just for walking and tracking shots in different locations. So that if you'll notice through the film, there's some very distinct outdoor looks, and Chris really chose his locations for that to have a specific change up for those walking shots. So it didn't get too tired. And the thing is like between each walking scene, it sort of has a connecting point. So you started at one point, something happens, and then you get to see him progress to his next point, and then he either hears a noise and changes directions and goes there, or whatever influences that. But yeah, it was some days were pretty peaceful, just walking around in nature in the woods, and other days were really messy and bloody and hot and sticky, and a lot of physical work too. So it was a big change up from day to day.
How do you get into the groove? Because I find it, because I'm a filmmaker myself and everything as well, and I find, different kind of projects have these different kind of, like, the lengths are different, whatever you're doing is kind of different, but like, how do you get in the mindset to consistently play Johnny? Like, was it difficult for you? Was it kind of like, a couple of days of preparation? Because it's going to be like consistently like boom slasher for like weeks, right? Where like you won't be able to turn it off. Like, I'm just curious, how was that like kind of getting into that specifically?
It is very much a process, and I've played a few different kind of sort of creature roles or slasher-esque kind of characters that have kind of prepared me for this. And one of the things is I always try to give myself a set of rules, especially when it's a character that doesn't have much dialogue and doesn't really facially express things. You kind of have to give yourself a list of rules to stay consistent for those sorts of things. So those were things that I started thinking of and working on early on. And I knew that once we got out there and we're on location and things had to fit, it's kind of a puzzle piece of a movie. They all had to work together, the timing and the special effects and Johnny's pace and everything. Yeah. So it was kind of just making sure that all worked once we were out there, and Chris would give me a note or correct something if we needed to change because we were at this point in the movie and Johnny had to move a little bit quicker or something like that. But it was a lot of just planned out ahead of time how Johnny would work. We actually did a couple of screen tests where we went down into a parkade and just did some like fake kills moments of like what Johnny would do and how he would do it and how he changes from one pace to his kind of killer pace. So we walked through, it was all planned out and walked through. And then when it comes to the special effects stuff, that's all kind of a tactile thing where you just have to, do what you need to do to make it work. And then I would step out and then a dummy would come in and then the blood and the guts would come in. And
were there any conversations? And it's interesting because I'm going to watch it again. I've watched it a couple times already. It's crazy. Thank you for the nightmares, Rye. I appreciate it. You're like, thank you. That's the point. But like, because like when you read about it, right, being in your perspective and everything, you're like, oh, is it going to feel like we're watching or playing or like we're in a video game? You know what I mean? But it's like, I didn't really like maybe some shots felt like that, but the way it was shot where like, it didn't feel like that. Were there any conversations with Chris or like the team about it, like being like that video game component of it, like making it feel like we're following the like Johnny, like as part of the video? Did that ever come up at all or not really?
Not with Chris. Chris, that was never kind of his intention, I don't think. But it was noticed by some people. They're like, oh, this is interesting. It's like it's like a third person tracking a character in a video game, which, because I mean, the comparisons, it's got the framing, it's got the guy walking down the middle there.
Yep.
But the only difference here is that you're kind of tethered to Johnny in a way and you have no control over it. So he's just taking you on his journey. But I do understand the comparisons because it does. And it's got a weirdly mesmerizing, relaxing feel to it in between the horror, because you're just with Johnny walking through the woods and the beautiful nature and the sounds and everything. So then when that switch up happens, it's a little more jarring. But but yeah, there was definitely comparisons. Just not, it wasn't from Chris though. That was he's not a gamer at all. So that was his that wasn't his thing. But he's not like, he doesn't diss it at all. He's just like, that wasn't what I was aiming for. But he's like, I definitely see it. So
yeah, 100%. And then last question too. I mean, you kind of said in the beginning, the process was big before you kind of went to camera. And I feel like that's really interesting because there's so many conversations, so many things change before you go to camera. So from an acting storyteller perspective, I feel like, you know, it could be seen as like two separate journeys, right? Like before filming something and then after filming something. Or for you on In a Violent Nature, did it feel like one journey with multiple steps? Like, I'm curious about that.
Yeah, it kind of did, I guess. It felt like one journey, I guess, because we did have different shooting blocks. There were two kind of big shooting blocks that we did with some big spaces in between, and then there are some other spaces where we had to come back and pick up either a kill scene or the scene at the lake. That's at a completely different location.
Yeah.
So there was kind of gaps between, but thinking back about it, it all feels like one big journey, one big thing that we did. But yeah, like as for the prep and everything, it was one of those things of just keeping consistent with everything that we had done from the first thing, and then I had everything written down in my notebook and stuff, and I would just double check everything every time I went to go do pickups or anything like that. Mm-hmm. But it's also one of those things I find that the costume kind of designates how Johnny is and how he moves a bit too. So it's kind of, once you get back into that costume, you immediately remember all those the little rules that you have set in place.
Absolutely. I don't mess around with horror movies. Like, that's like a genre I don't mess around with. I have rankings, like, it's crazy. You know what I mean? And I'm telling you right now that this is going to be a film in the genre that people are going to be talking about and watching for a long time. So I'm so happy and excited for you and the cast and everyone. Thank you so much. Exclusively in theaters May 31st. It's going to be In a Violent Nature. Rye, so great chatting with you, man. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. You too, man. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.